There's one guy in particular I'm really excited about, and I think he is a guy to go drop some of your money on. He's my number one pickup, Juju SmithSchuster.
Tyron Tracy, the Giants running back. It's hard to find a good running back of this caliber this late into the season. I think this is your last chance to get him. So I would go get Caleb Williams. It's Bijan Robinson. What are you doing with Bijan?
If your team is hurting on starters, I would trade him away.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Catching a Vibe. I'm your host, Drew, joined by my co-host, Mike. It's week 7, guys. So we're going over the waiver wire. Then we're going to do a trade segment.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah. How are you feeling about this week?
Week 7 waiver wire is not very great. There's a couple guys out there that I think have extreme value for you to add on your team. But, I wouldn't go and blow all your fab money on these guys. But there's one guy in particular I'm really excited about, and I think he is a guy to go drop some of your money on. I'm going to go with, he's my number one pickup, Juju SmithSchuster for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he's going to fill the role for Rashid Rice. He's going to step in there. He's going to be the number one receiver on that team right off the rip. I think he's going to get all the production on this team. Xavier Worthy on their team is just a deep threat kind of guy, and I don't think he's the guy. I think Juju Smith is a guy you better go out and get. I think he's pretty close to being a must-start receiver on this team. Mm-hmm. I'm excited about him. He's really the one guy on this waiver wire that you must get.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One guy I have is Tyron Tracy, the Giants running back. It's hard to find a good running back of this caliber this late into the season. In 2 weeks he started for the Giants, he had 18 carries for 129 yards versus the Seahawks. Then last night he had 17 for 56 catches for 57 yards and a touchdown. Until Singletary comes back, Tracy is a must start, I think, and he's outperformed Singletary. I think so. Maybe he'll take over the RB1 position from Singletary.
I agree with you. He's the number 2 waiver wire guy to go out and get. These are the 2 guys. Tyron Tracy for the Giants is a must add, I believe, off the waiver wires. The last 2 weeks he ripped it up. 2 weeks ago he had 18 carries for 130 yards. That's great. And his production just this last weekend, he had 17 carries, 50 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 catches for 57 yards. He looks fast. He got great hands. I think he's going to eventually get a big role in this offense. I think that's the type of guy you're looking for on the running backs. Out of the running backs, you want to go get these type of guys that are the number 2s that are close to getting in there and being the number 1 guy. And I think he's got a clear path to being a great player. I would say I would go get him right now. Tracy is a guy you must have.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. My second guy as a running back I'm kind of excited about is Kmet Vidal for the Chargers. I think he's another guy that's an RB2 on that team, but you got Dobbins ahead of him, and he's had his bad luck with injuries, and I'm just worried about that, and I want him to be on my team. He's a guy worth going out and getting. Gus Edwards, they just put on the IR. Mm-hmm. So he has the opportunity to be a number 1 back for a starter on a team. He's the kind of guy you want to go out and put on your bench, and maybe if he gets the shot, you have him on your roster, I would go get him.
Yeah, and the Chargers run the ball a lot. They are a running team.
They are a running-heavy team. And that's the guy you want to have on a team. He looks pretty good coming out of camp. They talked about him. They were excited about him. So,
mm-hmm. All right. My second guy I want to talk about is Demario Douglas. This is the receiver one for the Patriots. He's gotten the most targets, and he's had the most production. And he could be Drake May's guy. So I think he should be number 2 waiver wire pickup. He's only rostered in 21% of leagues, so he's fairly available in a bunch of leagues, and I think you should go get him. get a receiver one for a team, that's always a must.
Right. I think New England's offense is going to pass a lot. I like him as well. I think he is, like you said, their wide receiver one on that team. Drake May ain't scared to throw the ball, and they're going to be behind, and he's going to have to throw it for a ton to stay in games. If you look, he's had multiple games with over 9 targets. You got to like that. That means if he's getting looks, that means production's coming. So he's a guy that I'd like to go get. And also, Jalen Polk's another guy on the Patriots that I would look at, but I like Demario Douglas a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with another running back. I know people's kind of looked at him and not wanting to get him. He was a little banged up at the beginning of the year. I want Damen Paris. This is a guy that has proved that he can be good in the league. And Mixon kind of gets banged up a little bit in the course of the season. And I want a guy, like I said, that is going to be able to fill in that role and produce. So I want to grab him up. He's another guy I'm looking at.
All right. So now my guys are the rookie QBs, Caleb Williams and Bo Nix. Caleb Williams, back-to-back great weeks, 226 yards and 4 touchdowns, 50 yards rushing, 79 completion percentage. Now he's a top 12 QB in fantasy after struggling his first couple of games. I think Caleb is a good start every week from now on. He's owned in 50% of leagues. I think this is your last chance to get him. So I would go get Caleb Williams if your quarterback's underperforming.
I would agree. If he's on your waivers, I'd rush out to go get him. If you can add him, yes, he's definitely a must-add at the QB position. He's looking great. He threw 4 touchdowns this weekend, and I think he's starting to slow down the process of the defense and looking good. Yeah. I would definitely go get him.
And Bo Nix has been pretty solid. 3 out of the 4 weeks he's put up 20 points. He's QB 14. And if right now your backup sucks, I think he's worth a shot to pick up. And he's only rostered in 10% of leagues. Sean Payton believes in this guy. Sean knows talent. I think Bo Nix will be pretty solid in the future, and he'll be decent this year.
Bo Nix was my second QB to go out and get. I agree with you. I think he's another guy that likes to throw the ball all around, and he runs. He scrambles around, and he gets some yardage for you rushing. So I think he's another pickup guy for you. One more guy, he's about 50% rostered, Josh Downs for the Indianapolis Colts. This guy has looked really good. A lot of people like to say as long as Flacco's in there, he's worth it. But when Anthony Richardson was in there, he was his number one guy. He still had production with AR in there. So I think Josh Downs, if you look around and you see him on your waivers, I would definitely grab him up and stash him on my bench. I mean, he's had big weeks, so I think he's a guy to go and get.
All right. My next guy, I have Romeo Dobbs. Romeo is rostered in 29% of leagues. I like him, but he's in such a crowded receiver room. With him, Jayden Reed, Christian Watson, and Wicks, he'll have big games and he'll have stinker games. If any of those receivers get hurt, he'll be a great flex play for the rest of the year.
I agree with Romeo Dobbs. He's a receiver I wanted to look at, and when I looked at last year, his stats were the same as Jayden Reed. I mean, he put up the almost exact same numbers, and this guy does get targets, does produce for you, and I think he is probably the number one targeted player on their team, not as far as production. Jayden Reed is, but Romeo Dobbs is definitely a guy that if you're hurting at the receiver position, I would go pick him up as well. I agree with you there. So I'm going to throw out 2 running backs that are guys that are, I want to say, temper your expectations for. I think, they had good weeks or looked good, but they really don't have the staying power to play on to get out there and play. I'm going to go with Sean Tucker. He had an amazing weekend last week. You know, he was the number 1 scoring fantasy player last week for you. But I just don't think he's going to hold that power. Rashad White's coming back. He wants his production. And Bucky Irving, the whole team's excited about that guy. I just don't think he's going to get enough touches to produce for you. I would kind of shy away, but I'm just going to put his name out there. If he's at least a flyer or someone to pick up to put on your roster at the running back position, which is very crucial to have, is depth. So he's a guy like, and I want to mention Isaac Garindo from the 49ers. He's another guy that's going to have limited chances based on that team with CMC. Who knows if he comes back, he's not even going to touch the ball. So I would temper expectations with him. But with this injury, you don't know if CMC's coming back, and Jordan Mason's a little banged up. So if he gets his opportunity on the 49ers, we all know how great running backs are on the 49ers roster. So he's another guy I would stash on your bench if you got room without dropping a good player. I would consider picking him up.
All right. So my last guy, I have Alexander Madison. Not too many good running back options, but I think he's worth a mention. He's been solid this year with scores of 16-6, 13-6, 10 and 17. He's outperformed Zamir White, and I think Madison's going to be the RB1 for the Raiders moving on this season.
I agree with Madison has looked good. The thing about him I like is he's good at catching the ball. Exactly. So in a PPR league, he's a guy that you want to get. And the Raiders are going to have to throw the ball, so he's going to be out on the field a lot more than Zamir White. So he's the best running back, in my opinion, to have on your to pick up to put on your team if you're going to get somebody from the Raiders.
Yeah.
So one more guy at the tight end position, I'm going to put it back out there, is Zach Ertz. I think he's a guy to go out and get. Washington's offense is pretty explosive, looks pretty good. I want a piece of that offense. I mean, you got Scary Terry, and then you got who? I'm going to go with Zach Ertz. He's a guy that I want to try to grab up if you're hurting at the tight end position or you got a bye week that you need to fill in. He's a guy that I would try to go out and get.
All right, now the trade segment. So my first guy I have is Jared Goff. What would you do with Jared Goff?
Jared Goff is the QB position to me is kind of tricky for me. To me, I think a lot of guys you can get to fill in for that spot. So I want to trade him away if you can get the value for him. So he's a guy I want to trade away, especially if I can get a better running back is my priority one and a guy that I want to get on a trade. And then I want to go to receivers, the skilled position guys. But the quarterbacks, unless it's the top three guys, QBs, if I can trade them away and get a better player, I would do it.
I think Jared Goff's been the most disrespected quarterback in fantasy. They project him to score 14 a week, then this guy's been playing like a top 5 quarterback this year. The past 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, he completed 18 straight. Then last week, he had 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and 70% completion percentage. I mean, he's balling out, so I think he's a good backup quarterback. So my next guy is Amari Cooper. What would you do with Amari Cooper?
I would trade him away. But within keeping that in mind, the trades are coming up in the NFL. He could be traded to a better situation, a better team. But still, if he stays on Cleveland, I'm scared. Some days he's a hit. Some days he's a miss. He's a boom bust kind of guy. I like him personally. I think he's a great player. He just puts his head down and goes out and play ball. But he's a guy I want to trade away if I can get some value out of him.
I think he's a guy you should trade for because this is his the floor for Amari Cooper. If he gets traded to the Chiefs or the Commander, he's going to be a high upside, high end receiver too for the rest of the year. I think if he gets traded, if he stays with Cleveland, you're right. He's going to stay on your bench.
Yeah, he's got a high floor if he stays on Cleveland, but not a high ceiling type of guy. I just, with that Cleveland's offense, I want to trade him away if he's still worth value out there to trade.
Yeah. All right. Next guy is Jameson Williams.
He's on a great offense. He's a guy that if you could pull off the right trade, I would trade for him because better days are ahead, and that boom potential for that guy on that team he's the kind of guy that you definitely want to get on your team. So yes, I would trade for Jameson Williams on a top 5 offense in the NFL. Yes, I want him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's been very consistent too this year. 24, 14. He has stinker with 1 point, then 16, 17. He's a great flex play, and he can hit that home run ball at any time. So, all right, my next guy is Bijan Robinson. What are you doing with Bijan?
I mean, it's really tough for this guy, right? He has so many opportunities, so many touches. He's the guy that you want to trade for. He's the guy that you want to get on your team. But they kind of go away from him and leave him out there where he's not producing for you. But then, I mean, if you're trading him away, I mean, what's your other options? What are you trying to do? I mean, how is your team? If your team doesn't have very many wins and you're trying to trade him away to plug in 2 players that would end up scoring more points than one guy, I would say trade him away. But if your roster looks pretty good, I want to keep him.
I'd say trade him away if you could get like David Montgomery and a solid receiver too.
Right. If your team isn't scoring very many points, that's what I say. If you can trade him for 2 guys that you put on your roster, most of the times they're going to end up scoring more points than one guy in your roster. So if your team is hurting on starters, I would trade him away. But if your team's pretty solid, I want to trade for him.
Yeah.
To help bolster my running back, because that's my favorite position to trade for. There isn't too many guys that has as much production or chances as Bijan Robertson. The guy's going to get 20 touches a game plus. You don't have them options with a lot of the running backs in the league. So
yeah. All right. Cole Kmet. Where are you doing with Cole Kmet?
Cole Kmet, I'm trading for.
Right.
I'm trading for this. This tight end is such a hit and miss, and who's going to score and who's not. It's a guessing game, and he looks to be a targeted player from Caleb Williams on the Bears offense. I want a part of that because Caleb Williams is going to throw the ball around, and I think he kind of likes him and looks for him when they get in the red zone. As you've seen, he was only out there in limited plays and caught 2 touchdowns. I want this guy, so I would trade for him.
Yeah. My last guy is Chris Godwin, receiver 1 so far.
I would trade for this guy. This guy is awesome right now. He's having his best year. He's playing out of slot. He's getting so many targets. He's getting a ton of catches. He's a guy that, man, if you can trade away 2 for 1 and get him, and he's going to bolster your receiving core, you got to get him. You got to go out and get him. I think he's a smash play for you. I would go get him.
I'm kind of on the fence of trading him away because you drafted him late and he's receiver 1. So you could possibly get 2 studs or a stud running back if you're weak at running back. So
you're definitely going to get awesome return from when you drafted him at the beginning of the year. For somebody's going to pay a king's ransom for this guy out here. So yeah, I mean, if your roster's hurting on us and you need good running backs and you already have some solid receivers and you're not banged up at the receiver position, yes, I would trade him away if you can definitely make your roster a lot better. But if you still have good receivers and your roster looks pretty solid, I would try trading for him.
Yeah.
I would want a guy, he's a wide receiver 1 that you could try to swindle somebody to trade him for you as like a wide receiver 2. So I would go out and get him.
All right, that wraps up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead, give us a like. If you're new here, please subscribe. Helps the channel out a bunch. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.